that it was like it was my own baby. I'd spent months preparing it, testing it, and fine-tuning it until it was perfect. But having Jackson Boudreaux himself come in to dine was an event I was completely unprepared for. I knew he lived in New Orleans. I read the papers too, after all, but had heard so much talk of him being unsociable and hermit-like, I thought it unlikely he'd ever show up at my door, even if his family bourbon had inspired the menu. Now, here he was, all 6 foot scowling 3 of him, scaring the wits out of my hostess and sending an eerie hush through my dining room. "How did I miss his name on the reservation list?" I cried. "If I'd known he was coming, I'd have made sure to give him the best table." Eni said, "Pepper just seated a family of 8 at the best table. It's an anniversary party, boo. They'll probably be there for hours." I groaned. I was tempted to go out and find a table for him myself, but we were swamped in the kitchen. I'd just have to trust Pepper to do her best to fit him in somewhere as fast as she could. "Y'all get back to work," I instructed the rest of the kitchen staff, who had stopped what they were doing to stare at Jackson Boudreaux like everyone else in the place. When no one moved, I clapped my hands. The staff jumped back into action, knowing that a clap meant business. I never raised my voice with them, even when I was angry, which was rare. I had a naturally sunny disposition. It was about to be put to the test. "Henri, I need more pepper jelly," I called to one of my line cooks as I turned my attention back to the ramekins of duck étouffée I was plating. Every dish that left the kitchen did so only after a final inspection from me. As Henri rushed over with a container of the homemade spicy jelly, I pushed all thoughts of Jackson Boudreaux aside to concentrate on my task. When finished, I quickly handed the plates off to a waiting server. 2 more dishes needing final inspection instantly took their place from a server on my other side. The restaurant was filled to capacity, and at only 6 o'clock I knew I was in for a long night. I couldn't have been happier. After all, this was my dream come true. I'd grown up in the kitchen of my mama's restaurant and had been saving and scrimping for years to open my own. Cooking was in my blood as much as jazz music and the Saints. My happiness took its first hit when the hostess burst through the swinging metal kitchen doors in tears. I looked up at her in surprise. "Pepper, what on earth?" "That egg-sucking son of a motherless goat can kiss my ass," cried Pepper, swiping angrily at her watering eyes so her mascara smudged all over her cheeks. Pepper swore like a sailor, wore too much makeup, had hair dyed an unholy shade of streetwalker red, and skirt as short as her heels were tall. But she was a genuinely sweet girl who had a way with people. The regulars loved her. Besides, this was the French Quarter. If I required a hostess who looked like a sexless nun, I'd be seating the tables myself. I took Pepper by the arm and steered her through the kitchen to the back, near the walk-in freezer. The last thing I wanted was my guests getting a side of Pepper's notoriously salty mouth with their gumbo. I handed Pepper a tissue. "What's going on?" Pepper dabbed at her eyes and dramatically sniffed. "That man who just came in?" My stomach dropped. "Mr. Boudreaux?" Pepper nodded, then launched into an outraged rant. "He said he wanted a table, and I told him unfortunately we were fully committed. And he said what the hell did that mean? And I tried to nicely explain that we didn't have any available tables. And then he said all snotty-like, 'Don't you know who I am?' and demanded I find him a table. And I said, 'I just told you there aren't any tables available, sir. And there's a waiting list a mile long.' But he cut me off and said, really mean, too, he's like a crossbred dog, that his name was all over our menu, and if I didn't get him a table, he'd make sure our name was all over the papers. And not in a good way, either, because he knew all the press."